Madeline, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Andrew. I think there's a really nice segue here into the next speakers on the basis of the right to benefit. And you're talking about public benefit, you're talking about patient benefit, and this is what our next speakers are going to talk about now. So I'm delighted to introduce Anna Middleton. I'll let her introduce herself. She's doing some fantastic work, which we mentioned before, and she'll tell you some detail.
Fantastic. Good afternoon. My name's Anna, and I'm Head of Society and Ethics Research at the Wellcome Genome campus in Cambridge. That's where the Sanger Institute and EMBL EBI is. And I'm a psychologist and a genetic counsellor. And I'm going to tell you about the work that we've been doing for the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health on public attitudes towards genomics and genomic data sharing. So it's the people behind the data that you've just been hearing about. And so we've been conducting a global piece of research, and I'm going to share some data with you from that. And I just wanted to, before I get to the point of the data, just tell you a little bit more about the project. We know that when you engage with currently disconnected publics, it's often quite tricky, because actually most people have never really heard of genomics before. And so you have to find a way in. And so we've done that using established engagement methods using film. And so we have this little character here, Charlie, who will explain to you what genomics is and what genomic data sharing is, and give you enough information so that you can actually engage with the survey and share your attitudes, values and opinions about genomic data sharing. Trust also features very heavily in the survey. We ask people, what does trust look like to you? And this is a survey that is for broader public. So we've been recruiting representative publics across the world, and we've been checking with census data that they are indeed representative. So these are the people that we don't often connect with, the whole cross-section of society. Here's the Japanese, Urdu and Arabic translations, just so that you can see we have this survey in many different languages, and we are recruiting globally. So we currently have completed surveys from these countries, and we're also soon to be recruiting in these other countries. So you can see there's a really broad spread of public involvement. Again, this is representative publics. But I'm going to tell you about the first 9 countries where we've finished recruitment. So we have 19,000 completed surveys from representative publics from these different countries. There's about 2,000 to 3,000 in each country. And before I get into the nitty-gritty of the actual questions that we asked, I'd just like to sort of reassure you that we have spent a long time designing the actual questions and the way that we've delivered these and the way that we've translated these. So if you're interested in the reliability testing, the validity testing, the pilot work that we've done into the creation of the actual questions, we've got a methods paper published in Personalised Medicine. So when I'm going to show you the questions in a minute, you might be thinking, why was it worded in that way? Well, there are very, very specific reasons, which I won't go into now, but trust me, it's been robustly designed. Okay, so one of the first questions in the survey was, are you familiar with any of this? Are you familiar with DNA genetics or genomics? And we prompted people by saying, well, you might be familiar through your work, through your personal interest, direct-to-consumer testing, through your family, your medical history, or you might be unfamiliar. And here's the first 9 countries. So you can see that unless you're in the USA, the broader public from most of these countries are just not familiar with these terms. So this is really interesting. So Germany and UK particularly expressing, I just don't know what any of this is about. So when we're thinking of engaging and we're thinking of public conversations, the starting point is explaining in a social and sociable way what this is. What does it mean for you? Why is it relevant to you? Why do you need to take notice? We were also very interested in whether people just saw data as data. Is genomic data different from health data, different from banking data, different from Facebook data? We wanted to know, is DNA information different or special compared to other types of medical information? And so this is how we asked this question. Some people think DNA information is the same as other medical information like blood pressure or blood sugars, cholesterol. Others think DNA information is special or different because it tells us how we're related to people. What do you think? This is a very standard method of asking questions that are very unfamiliar to people. And so we found that the majority in some countries said, yes, I think DNA is different to other types of medical information. And we asked them to explain their reasoning. And they were saying things like, well, DNA information doesn't change over time, or DNA information can tell me about my ancestry, it can tell me about my children. It's different from a cholesterol reading. It does feel a little bit special. And obviously the next logical question is, well, does it need to be handled differently? Does it need specialist protections? Different from other medical data. And I'm not going to show you the results from that, but what we found was that broadly people were saying, yeah, I think about it as different, but I don't need it to have specialist protections. Data is valuable, it all needs to be looked after. So there wasn't something exceptional in terms of security about DNA information. I think what's also interesting here is that the Russians and the Swiss particularly were saying, no, data's data. DNA is just data. It was all the same. So what's interesting here is we often assume that people see the world through our own lens, and actually it's so clear that that's just not true. People have different cultural perspectives on this. And what I'd really like to hammer home is that this is just a snapshot at a single time point. Very, very broad brush. And for any social sciences data, just like science, you have to reproduce it. You have to look for consistency. You have to look over time whether it changes. You have to use different methods to analyse it. So that's what I would really encourage. We need social sciences research in this space. We need this to be funded and supported. So now asking, oh, would you donate your DNA information and medical information for use by others? And we posed 3 different scenarios, and we explained in detail what they meant. So we said you could donate your data and it would be used by medical doctors to help get a diagnosis in another person. You could donate your data and it would be used in non-profit research. You could donate your data and it would be used in for-profit research. And we explained the pros and cons and tried to give an objective overview of who would benefit and who wouldn't in that process. So here's the data from the medical about donating for medical doctors. So here's the number of people who said, yes, I would donate my anonymous DNA information and medical information if it was going to be used by medical doctors to help get a diagnosis for somebody else. So although we've got a similar kind of pattern here, it's still not very, very high numbers. You know, it's more than 50%, but we're not talking about 90%. People were saying, what's this about? I'm a bit curious, I'm a little bit cautious, sounds okay, but still not massive numbers saying, oh yes, I'm feeling very altruistic about this. Remember, these are broad public attitudes. When you pull out the patients from this group, you find they are the most enthusiastic. They're the ones that really can see the value and actually very excited about donating their data. So the next question, would you donate your anonymous DNA information and medical information for use by non-profit researchers? And you can see again a similar sort of pattern. Around the 50% mark, slightly lower over the 9 different countries, so slightly less interest, but still some enthusiasm. And then we asked about for-profit research. And then there's less interest again. So there are some who were very open with their data and said, yes, go use it, do great things with it. I actually don't even mind being identified in the process because I can see that this is how medicines will be developed, go use my data. But there are also a lot of people who are saying, why on earth would I want industry to use my data and make, have trials for medicines and things that I can't then afford? So there was this definite suspicion about industry. So we need to do a lot more to offer really clear messaging about the partnership needed with industry. I mean, this is the way that medicines and trials for medicines happen. You know, there has to be this partnership. So there's those 3 different graphs just showing you the most enthusiasm was for use of data in a clinical setting, and then non-profit, and then for-profit research. And then the last piece of data I'm going to share with you is on trust. We have lots of variables in the survey looking at trust. But this one tells you about, would you trust the following people with your DNA information and medical information? Doctors, universities, companies, governments. So those who would not trust their governments were the Polish and the Russians, and the Australians and the Canadians were the most trusting of their governments. Now, clearly, if we're going to be embracing global data sharing that's crossing geographical boundaries and is crossing policy jurisdictions and is crossing different legal frameworks, there has to be government buy-in. And what are those, you know, the public are thinking about government linking in with Home Office data, with criminal databases. They're thinking about that. We need to be upfront in conversations about that. And that's where I'd like to end. This is actually an unfunded study. I'm very, very grateful to Wellcome and the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health for giving us a little bit of money so we could make the films and do some of the translations. But here are the 14 collaborators around the world who are all working on this for free. And that shows you the enthusiasm in the social sciences community to deliver empirical attitude research of public so that we can really look at a partnership between science and society. Thank you.